So Sam has 5 chapters which see him journey from the wall to Oldtown. In the first chapter, he gets his orders from Jon, and he thinks he's leaving, 1, to train as a maester to replace the dying Aemon, 2, to protect the royal Aemon Targaryen who might be victim of Melisandre, but he doesn't realize that he's also taking a switched out royal baby, and so can't understand why Gilly's upset. He's also quite perceptive in this chapter. He realizes that Jon's changed on becoming Lord Commander, that he's harder and is taking tough decisions. He is a good perspective on the feeling at the wall. Like, he comments a few times that Jon's unpopular with the men because they're having to rebuild the stairs up to the top of the wall very quickly. And also we see through his eyes that Jon's still very allied emotionally to the Stark family. And this could be very dangerous. Like, he's writing a letter to Tywin, but this could be very thin comfort if Stannis falls. So I think Sam has a really clear picture of the political danger that Jon's putting himself in. In Sam 2, we see the voyage from Eastwatch to Braavos, and we get a lot of history about Braavos and Skargos. And then through Aemon, who's kind of getting a bit delirious at this point, we get this really wonderful side glances at Dunk and Egg, and sort of realize what Aemon gave up in the crown. Sam still hasn't figured out what's up with Gilly, and we start to realize that Darian is a bit of a sleazebag. In Sam 3, we get to Braavos, and because Aemon's dying, they miss their boat, so they're left there for a little while. And perhaps, arguably, somewhat improbably, Sam bumps into Cat of the Canals. And he ends up beating up Darian, which is one of the coolest scenes, I think, for Sam so far. But he's rescued by a chap called Zondo. I don't know how you pronounce that. Who knows about dragons? And that secures him the passage on from Braavos on the Cinnamon Wind. And in between, we learn that Aemon has died, which actually I found really surprisingly sad. And it is revealed that Aemon was convinced that generations of Targaryens had been profoundly misled about who would be the prince who was promised, because they were focusing on boys, and that rather than Rhaegar or anybody else, it's actually Dany. And he is just exhorting Sam to go to the Citadel and get them to send someone to be her advisor. And then he says this really cryptic, weird thing about Melisandre and Stannis, where he says, the sword is wrong. She has to know that. The light without heat and empty glamour. And I find the word glamour quite interesting. And I'm hoping we can discuss that in the Melisandre bit. And then he speaks of a glass candle that cannot be lit and eggs that would not hatch. And the Sphinx was the riddle, not the riddler. And as a side note, Sam finally gets it on with Gilly. Yay. And then in the final Sam chapter, he gets to Oldtown, and it's this really awful entry to Oldtown where they see the corpses flowing in the bay as you start to see the consequences of Euron's raiding. And Sam wonders even if Horn Hill's safe, because he harbours a dream of sending Gilly and the boy away to live with his family. He's intercepted by Alleras the Sphinx and spills his guts in a way which I find slightly weird, and I wonder if there's some sort of magics involved in that. And he is taken to meet Archmaester Marwyn, who is clearly dodgy as a dodgy thing. And he sees the obsidian candle, and he learns that the Citadel's opposed to targs and magics and all that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, he's decided to spill his guts to Alleras and Marwyn, and is kind of in their hands as the book ends. So ... And I guess there are some interesting kind of things to discuss with Sam. Does he have the Horn of Jaruman, those random shards that he still has? Is it true what Aemon says, that Melisandre... I mean, does she truly believe Stannis is the prince who was promised? Who the hell is Marwyn, and is he to be trusted? And is Alleras really the Sphinx? So I leave it open to you guys.
I'd like to just say first that I'm glad that you had a positive reaction to Sam getting it on with Gilly. A lot of people seem to react negatively to that, especially the descriptions of his pink mask and all that, kind of reacting with disgust. So yeah, I'm glad that some people were happy for Sam there and not just closing their eyes in terror.
Oh, yeah, it's sweet.
Cute.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm happy that Sam got it on, because he always doubts himself. He has no self-esteem, and he's just a nice guy. So yeah, I'm happy he got it on with someone.
It's very interesting when he actually went to Gilly, or Gilly came to him. I don't even remember. He had a lot of the same thoughts that John had when the first time he and Ygritte were together, and that was kind of surprising. They were thinking exactly the same things.
They're cute, aren't they? I mean, they both, in both cases, it's Gilly and Ygritte who kind of make the first move. And in both cases, Sam's so conscious that he's a man of his night's watch. And part of the reason why he hates Darian is because Darian's betraying his oaths by going with the brothel madam. And, Sam's a good guy. And he even says to Gilly, look, if I could marry anyone, I'd marry you. So he's an honourable guy. He's clearly not using her. And he really does kind of care that, oh my God, it's dangerous at Oldtown. Is it still dangerous at Horn Hill? Am I going to leave her somewhere safe? And he has this kind of delusional picture of her being a nice serving maid in his family castle, and that the boy might grow up to be a squire for someone if he has some talent. So he genuinely wants the best. And I think I respect that. There's not that many people in this series of books that are just good guys. And I think Sam's one of them.
And Aemon is too, so these chapters, you're definitely getting some of the more positive characters, and that was definitely why I felt really, really sad when Aemon died, because I think he's definitely one of the purest characters of the story, and obviously he lived a full life and all that, and did what he did for the reasons he believed in. But yeah, I think that just seeing him go and seeing these great characters that are so just kind and generous suffer so much, really, that's where it gets me so much.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised how moved I was when Aemon died. But I think that's beautiful writing by George, the way we see him reminiscing about Duncanegg and fearful of dying and what's going to happen. What if there's just nothing? It's so moving and so real and authentic. In this world of high fantasy, there's something just so real and authentic about Aemon's fear of dying. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah, and he seems a lot less prejudiced. Like he's much more open to different ideas and different opinions, and he just loves knowledge. He loves learning.
Yeah, as does Sam, and I guess that's why we love them, right? Because they're the bookworms of this world, and we're the geeky bookworms too, right? So they're our peeps. Anyways, back to Sam a little bit. So, do any of you have an opinion on the kind of weird shards that he's carrying around that John gave him?
Doesn't he have the horn? Is it still intact or is it broken now?
It's shards now, I think.
And weren't the shards of dragonglass and the horn was still intact, but it wouldn't make any sounds?
Yeah, so the quote is the war horn he had given to Sam. On closer examination, the horn had proved cracked, and even after he had cleaned out all the dirt, John had been unable to get any sound from it. And then he says rather nastily, the rim was chipped as well, but Sam liked old things, even worthless old things. So in a way, it's kind of like, it's quite a nasty thing, John says.
There's definitely something to the horn.
I think so.
Because we're pretty sure, Tormund seemed pretty sure that the horn Melisandre burned wasn't the horn of Joramun. Exactly. So it has to be somewhere, right? And this was found beyond the wall. So...
That's a pretty big coincidence, though.
Yeah, but this is the guy who's coincidentally run into Bran and then coincidentally run into Cat of the Canals. I think my theory is either Sam has it or I think it's probably in Winterfell somewhere, which is why Mance is poking around. But I like the idea that... I think it would be very George R. R. Martin if, poor Sam has to barter away even his Night's Watch cloak just to get passage. But the only thing that the guys even take his books... The only thing they don't want is this meaningless bunch of crap that he's got. So he still has it when he makes it to Oldtown. So it's the stuff that John rejected, the pirates rejected, and yet if it turns out to be this weapon of mass destruction, that would be awesome.
So I guess the question then is, does it still work? And if it does it work in Oldtown, or has Sam safely taken the horn out of range, so to speak, of doing any damage?
I was just thinking the same thing.
It also supposedly wakes giants from the ground, so maybe that'll have an effect.
Well, I think the conventional wisdom would be the Citadel would be the furthest place from which magics would work. But then again, he and by extension the horn is in the grips of Archmaester Marwyn, who has obsidian candles, which may or may not work like Palantir, I'm not sure. But there's obviously something really weird about how Alleras knew where to go and pick up Sam. And also somehow made him spill the beans on everything.
And also, Sam was born on Hornhill, and there's got to be something to that.
Other than George R. R. Martin just having a joke like Man Woody, Hornhill, you know.
Yes.
And do you think Alaris is the Sphinx? So the Sphinx is the riddle, not the Riddler?
Well, I think when you go off that whole idea that Alaris is indeed Torella, which I find very believable and pretty explicit when you think about it, that is indeed Oberyn Martell's daughter who went off to masquerade as a man at the Citadel. I think that makes perfect sense, and in that case, she's a riddle.
There you go.
There you go.
It's fairly weak, though, isn't it, that you just spell someone's name backwards? Like, relative to all the other deep mysteries that are in this series.
Well, I think she just thought it might be a clever way to come up with a name for herself, and it's a good name to use, I think, and that's pretty much all there is to that.
Anything else on the Sam chapters?
I was just going to say that it's just the classic style of George R.R. Martin, in which we were talking about it in the first FeastDance episode, where he sort of does this tease thing of characters almost meeting again. So during A Feast for Crows, I was just thinking that's going to be the end of the book, because I knew that Sam was the last chapter of the book, that it would be some plot where he meets his father again, and his father would sentence him to death or something for treating his oath to the next watch. But it didn't happen.
I think going off that, it's interesting to think about where Sam is going from here, because he's definitely at this point embroiled in a lot of stuff that is going to have some major implications to the overall narrative. I mean, Marwyn having all these plans and that connection, and just the fact that Oldtown, I think, is going to become an epicenter for a lot of interesting stuff in the story moving forward, and I think it's going to be fun to see how Sam plays into that.
Do you think Sam is going to meet either... No, in fact, do you think he's going to meet Sansa one day? Or do you think...
going to make the three.
Exactly. Or maybe even Rickon and Osha.
Why not? I mean, he's going to sail back at some point via Skagos, right?
Also, do you think he's going to meet Euron Crozo when the Ironborn take Oldtown?
Oh, is that their plan? Are they taking Oldtown?
Yeah,
I think so.
They've got the they're going for it. And Oldtown's got the defenses up. I just think it's amazing that Sam at this point is party to a lot of knowledge. Like he's the one who knows that Bran's alive. He's the one who knows. Well, he doesn't know that Arya's alive. He's the one who knows Aemon's theory about Dany. Now he knows about the whole baby switch. He's party to a lot of secrets, and yet again, he seems to talk quite easily.
Remember when it was in the little exchange between Jon and Sam, where he said something like, Matt Schrader has no more royal blood than I do.
Why, you think Sam's secretly royal?
No, Jon said that.
Ah, okay.
Jon.
Yeah. Ha ha.
There is this theory that Sam is one of Robert's bastards.
Huh?
What?
Oh, man. What?
What?
That's even more bonkers than my Quentin is alive theory.
I think I read it on Westeros, and it's the theory where all of the Stark-related people have someone that is Robert's bastard. So Gendry with Arya, Sansa with Maya Stone. Then one of the Saturn was a suggestion, but there was also someone that said Sam as a suggestion as well, and explain. I'm sure there's more detail online somewhere, but they explained that Robert would have been close to Hornhill around the time of Sam's conception. When I was reading Sam's second chapter, I think, and he mentions, his role model father tries to teach him to swim by throwing him in a pond.
The first chapter where he talks about being chained on a wall because he wanted to be a maester, and his father says, if you want chains, I'll give you chains, and he chains him up for 3 days or something to his bed.
Yeah, I mean, we get so much detail about how horribly abused he was as a kid, and how he'd been sent off and expected not to come back, and it was just that story about being chained up and then his kind of fear of being a maester that he can't even express properly to Jon. And then, this is another example of how awesome Aemon is. As soon as Sam even starts to explain this, Aemon's like, I totally understand you. Even my family were like, to wear a chain is servitude. He's so empathetic towards Sam and so sensitive to picking up on that. I love those guys.
I also think this is further proof that if you have the will, you can make a theory out of absolutely anything in these books, in the same way that you can make a prophecy tailored to your needs, as we see multiple times. Yeah, I think that as I think about this, there's some evidence that could
how we
support
deal
that
with the
idea.
dates of the next book.
Yeah.
Of course.
And as Archmaester Marwyn properly warns us, prophecy makes tricks of us all, right?
It's a treacherous woman.